Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the second book of Kings, Melachim Bet. We are in the middle of Perek Yudches, that's chapter 18. We are about to read verse 17. As we read in the first half of the chapter, Hezekiah has now taken the throne. He reversed all of the evil idol worship and corruption that had been rampant in the time of his father Achaz, destroyed all of the sacrificial altars that were scattered throughout the land, focused the people only on the altar that was in the temple, and turned the people towards God, towards the knowledge of the of what is the basis of monotheism, is that it is not sacrifices, it is not superstition that brings one closer to God, but it is one's behavior, it is how one lives. It is important, and then we learned of Hezekiah's alliances with those nations that were tried to rebel against Assyria. We learned how he rebelled against Assyria at a weak point in the time of the Assyrian kingdom. However, now Sancheirav, who is now the king, the king of the Assyrian Empire, is aggressively asserting his dominance over the area. And one by one, he is destroying all of these nations with whom Hezekiah had made these alliances. We also know from this time period that the Egyptians, whom this alliance was looking to for superpower support, was also taken down by the Assyrians in a major battle. I think El Takeh, which is recorded in the annals of the Assyrian Empire. We left off last. Assyria had conquered the Judean countryside, especially and most importantly, the large cities other than Jerusalem, and most significant was the city of Lachish, and we discussed that last time. The Assyrians have now conquered Lachish, and the people of Israel are left with just the capital, Jerusalem. And in the capital, Jerusalem, we learned how Hezekiah had prepared the city for the siege by building walls, adding extra neighborhoods to Jerusalem, making it the size of the city much larger, absorbing refugees from the countryside, absorbing refugees that had come from the northern kingdom, and also created a water system to allow the people to withstand the siege. This is the point where we left off last time, and it would be important. This next one we're going to see a kind of a spiritual or a theological debate going on between the leaders of the Assyrians, of the Assyrian army, and Isaiah, who leads the spiritual aspect of Hezekiah's revolutionary, not revolutionary so much, but changes back to what Judaism is really supposed to be. And I just want to, before we read what Rabshakeh is, we're going to hear about him in just a minute, has to say to the people of Jerusalem as the head of the Assyrian army. Let's see at this point what it is that Isaiah is telling the people at this very point. In the first chapter of Isaiah, which took place at this very time, during the time when Lachish had fallen, the people had retreated into Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is now under siege. Hezekiah has paid tribute to the Assyrians, but that didn't work. The Assyrians want to conquer Jerusalem anyway. What was Isaiah telling the people then, right? So Isaiah was telling the people then, if we look at chapter 1, verse 11, Lama li rov zivchechem yomar Adonai. Why do I don't need all of your sacrifices, says God. Savati olot elim v'chelev miriam. I have had enough of your burnt offerings of rams and the fatted up cattle. Vidam parim, and the blood of cows, ukvasim and sheep, va'atudim lo chafatzti, and in baby goats and lambs. I'm just not interested. But kisavo leros panai, when you come to see me, in other words, emphasizing coming to the temple only, I don't want all of these sacrifices that you were doing on all of these bamot and all of these altars. When you come to see me, Who wants this from you, to come and trample in my yard and just bring these animals, right? Don't bring me all this. I'm not interested in all of this. And he goes on, and I says, I'm not going to listen to you, but rather, what do I want? Rachatsu, hizaku. I want you to wash yourselves clean. Right? Hasiru roa malalechem. Get rid of the evils of your ways. Mineged from before me. Chidlu hareah. Stop doing evil. Limdu heitev. Learn well. Right? Dirshu mishpat. I need you to seek justice. Ashru chamotz. I need you to straighten out that which was wrong. Shiftu yasom. Give justice and judgment to the orphan. Rivu almanah. And fight for the widow. In other words, this is what I want. This is the message that Isaiah is giving the people at this very time. Don't look to the sacrifices. Don't look to the, and I skipped over a few verses, of the rituals. But fix yourselves. Do good, right? And then God says, if your sins are red like crimson, they'll be whitened and cleaned like snow, and so on. So these are that's the message that Ishayahu, Isaiah, is giving the people at this very time. As Hezekiah has the people focus, and as we've stated on several occasions, the point of the worship in the temple was to draw the people away from that type of worship, from the type of worship of sacrificing, which people thought would bring about some kind of benefit by somehow appeasing God. This is not what the goal of the Torah is. Now, however, Rabshakeh is going to have a very different message at this time. So here we have the people, the countryside is destroyed. The major cities of Judah, with the exception of Jerusalem, have been destroyed and conquered. By Yishlach, Hezekiah has paid tribute, but that wasn't enough. And here comes the Assyrian army encamped against Jerusalem. The terrible event that Hezekiah and those that supported him had been preparing for, and knew was inevitably going to come. Vayishlach melech Ashur, this is verse 17, the king of Assyria sent Estartan, v'etz Rabsaris. So these are titles of various Assyrian officials, and the Rabsaris, you could translate the head of the eunuchs, or the head. Saris could also mean the assistants of the king, the head. V'et Rabshakeh, and Rabshakeh. This could be a title. This could actually be his name. He sent them. They were with him at Lachish, where he had just conquered. Sent them in Lachish el Melech Hezekiah, to the king Hezekiah, Bechel Kaved, with a very large army accompanying them, Yerushalayim, towards Jerusalem. Vaya'alu vayavo'u Yerushalayim, and they went. And they went up to the Jerusalem. Vayalu vayavo vayamdu b'to'ala sabrecha al yona, and they went and they encamped and they stood at the Ta'ala is like an aqueduct of the upper pool, Asher b'mesilat sde koves, which was in the path of the field of those that washed clothing. So this was where they camped. Vayikru el hamelach, and they called out to the king. Of course, the king himself sent a messenger. Vayetze, so Hezekiah sent Vayetze leim Eliakim ben Chilkiyahu asher al habayis. Eliakim, the son of Chilkiyahu, who was in charge of the king's house. V'Shevna hasofer, and Shevna, the scribe. Shevna is a scribe whom archaeology has actually identified his name in writings from this contemporary period in Jerusalem. V'Yoach ben Asaf HaMazkir, and Yoach, the son of Asaph, who was the recorder. So they went to greet these men who were there with a very large, intimidating army. Vayomer aleim Rabshakeh, and Rabshakeh said to them, Imru el Chizkiyahu. This is the message that you should bring to Hezekiah, to Hezekiah. Ko amar hamelech hagadol melech Ashur. So says the great king, the king of Assyria. Ma habitachon hazeh asher batachta. What is this trust in which you are having trust? In other words, what is with you guys, right? As we're going to see in a moment, what they wanted was capitulation to Assyria. capitulate to Assyrian ways of life, capitulate to Assyria. We want to take Jerusalem away as a potential source of power which can challenge Assyria and exile the leadership to Assyria. This is what they wanted, as we'll see in later verses, which we're going to read soon. And capitulate. What is it that you have trust in? In other words, because you can hear from Rabshakeh that it was evident that they understood that this was a theological and moral battle as much as it was a political one. You are trying to say that we are going to be here and worship God. We have a higher mission, a higher cause, and we're not about to give it up. We're going to stand for it. We're going to stand even to our deaths, even because that's inevitably what's going to happen if you don't capitulate, right? But we believe in what it is that we are promoting the life which Isaiah had described. The religious leadership of Jerusalem at the time had said, no, we are not going to capitulate and do and worship God in the ways that everyone else in the world today is doing, and the way Assyria is doing, through violence, through conquering other lands, through oppression. That is not what we stand for. We stand for justice for the widow, making right what's wrong, helping those that need the most help. This is what we stand for. So what exactly is this? What is this belief that you believe in? What is this trust that you have faith in? Amarta ach devar sfasayim. Eitza ugvura la milchama. Right? You think that just the words of your lips is a good advice for doing war? In other words, you think that through your ideas that's how you're going to win fights? Right? Right? You don't win fights like that. You win fights with might, with swords, with bows and arrows, with horses and chariots. That's how you win wars, not with these ideas that you think you're going to bring into the world. What exactly, upon whom is it that you're having faith, that you're having trust, that you decided you were going to rebel against me? Like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense to me. Every other group, either they mustered up the strength that they could and then fought and lost in almost all cases with Assyria, or they capitulated. But you are standing tall for some kind of idea? Like, what is this? So then he thinks to himself, right, Rabshakeh can't even imagine that these people are standing up for an idea, for a philosophy, for something deeper, something much more important, something they're willing to die for. So then he starts to say, well, maybe you'd have faith in Egypt and you think they're going to rescue you. Are you having faith on the walking stick that you lean upon, which is really just a reed that bends and breaks on Egypt? In other words, you're using Egypt as your stick to lean upon, and you think they're going to come to your help. They're just a koneh ratzutz. They're just a leaning stick you're going to lean on them, but they're going to bend and break. They're not going to back you up. Asher yisamechi shalav, the kind that people will lean upon. However, it doesn't help you. Instead of helping you, it ends up just scraping and poking your hand. Kain Paro Melech Mitzrayim. That is what Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to all of those who have faith in him. You can't trust him. He's not going to save you. And then you're going to say, you're going to tell me, you're relying on your God. And remember, Rabshakeh can't imagine an idea of a God, right? Like Isaiah is teaching, a God that stands up for justice, for righteousness, a God that stands against oppression. But rather, when he thinks of a God, he thinks of a God that you appease with sacrifices. So he says, you had all of these altars all over the place where you were sacrificing to God, and Chizkiyahu took them away. That God doesn't like you anymore. You took away all of the worship. The people were worshiping him. And God, and then what did Chizkiyahu say? The king said, only in this temple can you bow to me. And Rabshakeh is hinting that Chizkiyahu did this selfishly, right? He wanted everyone to come and bow to him, right? Rather than sacrifice to God all over the place, because Rabshakeh couldn't imagine the idea, the philosophy that Judaism was here to bring to the world. The entire purpose of the Torah, the entire purpose of the nation of Judah, the nation of Yehuda, was to teach the world that that's not what this is about. It's not about sacrifices. It's not about might and power, and it's definitely not about oppression. So before this mizbeach, before this altar, Tishtachel b'Yerushalayim, only here should you bow in Jerusalem. So that God's not with you, says Rabshakeh. So now, and then what do you think? You think you have a power, right? So you can't rely on Egypt. You can't rely on your God. So maybe you have a strong army. What? I'll bet you, he says. I'll make you a wager, a bet with the king of Assyria. I'll give you 2,000 horses, right? I'll just give them to you. Let's see if you even have enough riders that are skilled enough to ride those horses. You don't even have that. So how do you think you can fight? How could you turn back and refuse the requests of even one of the lowly officers of my master? But tiftach l'chal Mitzrayim, and instead you have faith on Egypt. L'rechav u'lefarshim. Remember, Rabshakeh can't even imagine the faith that the people had in God, which was a faith that the people were willing to risk their lives for, because of the idea is so important, is so basic to their purpose, that they're ready to stand up for it despite the overwhelming odds. Ata now hamim baladei Adonai alisi al hamakom hazeh lahashchiso, right? And the bottom line, he says, do you think that we have our strength without God, right? God is with us, says Rabshakeh of Assyria. He's the one that gives us the strength to destroy all of these lands. I came here to destroy Jerusalem because God is on our side. Adonai Amar Elai Alei Haloretz Hazos Vashchisa. God is the one who told us to come to this land and destroy it. Vayomer Eliakim ben Chilkiyahu v'Shevna v'Yoachel Rabshakeh. All of this time, Rabshakeh was speaking in Hebrew. He was speaking in a language that the people of Jerusalem could hear, because he wanted to demoralize them. He wanted the people to hear what he was saying. So they said, Daberna al avdecha Aramis. Don't speak to us in our language in Hebrew. Speak to us in Aramaic, which is the language of the Assyrian Empire. Kishomim anachnu. People can hear us. Bi'al tedaber imanu Yehudis. Don't speak with us the Jewish language. Bi'aznei ha'am asher alachoma. When the people are able to listen, the people that are at the walls of the city listening to you talk. We don't want them to hear this demoralizing talk. Rabshakeh said to them, Ha'al adonecha ve'elecha shalachani Adonai. He just ignored them. He ignored that request. He said, do you think that I'm trying to convey this message to your leader? What do you think? I'm stupid. It's not your leader that I'm speaking to. I want to speak to the people. I want the people to get the message and then dump their leader. The people should rebel against their leader, right? I don't want them to be loyal to Chizkiyahu. I want them to hear common sense. To speak these things. The main thing is to speak to the population, to speak to the people. I want them to lose faith in their leadership. Because those people are now under siege, eating their excrement and drinking their own urine, because they're suffering. They're suffering, and they'll hear my words. Those are the ones that I want to hear, because those are the ones that are going to rebel against their king. So Vayamod Rabshakeh Vayikra B'Kol Gadol Yehudis. So Rabshakeh then stood up. It sounds like he got up on a pedestal in a place where people could hear, and he called out in a loud voice in the Jewish language. Vayidaber Vayomar, and he spoke and he said, Shimu Dvar HaMelech HaGadol Melech Ashur. Everyone, hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Ko Amar al-Melech, so says the king. Al Yasi Lachem Chizkiyahu. Don't let Chizkiyahu, don't let your king Hezekiah trick you and deceive you and lead you. Ki lo yuchal latzil eschem miyado. He is unable to save you from the hands of the king of Assyria. He has nothing. Va'al yaftach eschem Chizkiyahu al Adonai leimar. And don't let Chizkiyahu give you faith and teach you about faith and reliance upon God, and have him tell you that God will save us. That the city will not fall into the hands of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to your king Hezekiah. Because this is what the king says. What is it that we want? Do with me, make peace with me. Utsu'u elai, exit the city, in other words, surrender. V'yechlu ish kafno v'ish tinaso shesu ish mevoro, and come with me, and we will exile you to Assyria, where you can all sit under your vine and eat your fig tree. The words that are used often by the prophets to refer to a time in the future when people are at peace. And Rabshakeh is saying you can have peace, just join Assyria. Stop being foolish and standing under Hezekiah. And if you come, at Bo'ivil akachti eschem, I will take you to a land, el eretz kartzachem, a land which is just like yours, eretz dagan v'sirosh, a land that is full of grain and wine, eretz lechem ukramim, a land of bread and vineyards, eretz zeis yitzaru dvash, a land of flowing oil and honey, v'chiyu v'lo samusu, and you will live and you will not die. V'al tishmu al Chizkiyahu, don't listen to your king Chizkiyahu, ki yasis eschem leimar Adonai yatzilenu, because he is misleading you by telling you that God will save us. Did any of the other gods of these other nations save their land when the king of Assyria conquered them? You know, they all fell. Where are the gods of Hamas v'Arpad? The gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Eva. Did they save Samaria from me, right? Shomron. In other words, I conquered all of these lands. Where are those gods? Why do you think your God is any better than theirs? Right? Who among those gods were able to save their lands from me, that you think that God should save Jerusalem from me, from my hand? The people were silent, and they didn't answer him. They didn't engage in this debate. Why? Because the king had commanded them not to engage, not to debate him. This is fascinating because despite this speech, one would think that he would demoralize the people. But Chizkiyahu's leadership was such that the people actually remained loyal. They remained loyal, they remained faithful, and they understood the importance of this time. The people of Jerusalem stood with their leader despite the terrible suffering that they were going through, and despite this demoralizing speech, and despite this offer of supposed peace. We all know that it wouldn't quite have been such a wonderful place if they gave themselves up to be enslaved by the Assyrians and exiled. It wouldn't exactly have been a 5-star vacation. But here they were at this time. Now the army has laid siege to Jerusalem. The people of Jerusalem are suffering. Hezekiah is now the king, and he is leading them against Assyria, and all hope seems to be pretty hopeless. Vayavo el Yakim, but Hezekiah and the people are remaining faithful to God, remaining faithful to the message of Isaiah, the message that Yeshayahu stated at this very time that I started this podcast with. The final verse for today, the end of this chapter, Vayavo el Yakim ben Chilkiah, Asher al-Abayetz v'Shevna Sofer v'Yoach ben Asaf HaMazkir. These are the 3 officials that led the delegation to talk to Rabshakeh. They came back to Chizkiyahu, Krue v'Gadim, with their clothing torn, Vayagidu lo divrei Rabshakeh, and they told him what it was that Rabshakeh said. So here we now are at this very dire point, and we have this clash of civilizations, this clash of worldviews. Is it power and might? Is it oppression? He who is stronger is going to lead? Or can a people say, we are going to remain faithful to justice. We are going to remain faithful to righteousness. We are going to be the ones that are ashru chamotz, that straightens out that which is corrupt and crooked. And we are going to stand up to that against all odds, even if it means going to our deaths. This is how this debate is being portrayed by the prophets here in this chapter, and we will see how this will play out as we read through the next chapters. Thank you so much for studying chapter 18 with me. Looking forward to studying chapter 19 and the rest of this wonderful book of Kings. Thank you.